All right, welcome back to segment 4 of our discussion of 5 temptations of a CEO and 5 dysfunctions of a team. George Kriza and Pat Ritchie having a very nice conversation, hopefully helpful to CEOs out there and organizations trying to maximize their productivity and effectiveness and improve their culture. So when we're up at this stair step now of number 4, we're talking about accountability. And accountability is contrasted with what again, Pat?
So accountability in the 5 dysfunctions of a team, the root cause of that is when the temptation to the CEO to give in the being wanting to be popular will end up causing a lack of accountability on his team. So the way you'll see this, and this is, it's very common. People want to be popular, but you'll see it like there'll be a hesitation when it's time to hold someone accountable. And they're afraid to alienate a staff member or a friend. Make even a results-oriented CEO might balk at this. So this is particularly hard in family companies. So many years ago, I was giving a speech for the University of Pittsburgh's Business School in Pittsburgh, and all the questions at the Q&A at the end were around accountability, and and they were all around family. And I finally asked, they actually told me when I came in, this was the largest group they'd ever had. It was there at the older hotel, the William Penn Hotel, top floor. Place was packed, the biggest group they'd ever had. And I asked, how many people here are from family-owned businesses? And almost the entire room raised their hand. Because we want to be popular, we want to be liked, we want to be loved by our family members. And so holding somebody accountable in a family is extremely difficult. I mean, who wants to hold mom or my brother-in-law, right? These are the parents of my nephews and nieces, so it can be very, very difficult. So it's difficult, probably most difficult in family businesses, but it's also difficult where people have got to know each other, they're close to each other, and but when you do that, you'll start to get mediocrity for the team because we're not accountable, and even worse, you're going to create resentment among team members that hold themselves to a high level. They have a high standard of performance. They hold themselves accountable all the time. And when others are not held that, now you get resentment among your best people.
So what you're telling me is I can't treat my wife like a CEO.
I'd encourage you not to. Yeah.
But again, your point is well taken because it's very, very difficult to get down to brass tacks about what the expectation is and whether or not a person is achieving the expectation. Ultimately, you have to get very acute to have that conversation. And so the examples in the book were about CEOs that have had 360 evaluations of themselves, and then when they discuss their own evaluation in front of their team members, it turns into a fiasco because they're not even holding themselves accountable.
It's so true, George. I mean, what we encourage our clients to do with the CEO is to, if you feel tempted, and almost all of us do, and remember, accountability is, and we've done thousands of assessments on teams, almost always accountability is the lowest ranked by the team themselves. They'll say in their own words, this is our lowest one as we ask them questions. So we tell CEOs, look, don't work for affection from your people. That's not it. You're not looking to be popular, but you're working for long-term respect. You're looking for long-term respect, not affection from your team. And remember, this team that's around you are not just your friends or family members, but you have to view them as key employees that must deliver on commitments. And I've been in teams where friends or family of a CEO were able to slide. They didn't meet their commitments in a very good way, but they just let it go because it was almost an entitlement for them. So you have to look at your team as members that have to deliver on their commitments. And I would say lastly this, if you fail at being a CEO, they're not going to like you either. So if the company goes south, I mean, there's one NFL team that the players the players really didn't like the head coach. And so they said, we got to get rid of the head coach. The owner said, okay, we got a new head coach in here who really worked for their affection. And he loved his players, and his players loved him. The team had the same record as they did underneath the tough-nosed guy, hard-nosed guy who they didn't like. And then for 5 years, the team never got above 500. And when they fired the hard-nosed guy, one player, I heard him interview, goes, yeah, he was too tough on us. And then when they fired the nice guy, 4 years later, he said, yeah, he was too easy on us. So quit working for something other than results. I mean, you got to hold people accountable to achieve what they're committed to.
Sadly, you're using these great football examples to a guy here from Chicago.
You'll get there. You'll get there.
I hope so. But the McCaskies get a lot of criticism for not holding their team leaders accountable. So we shall see what we shall see, and go Bears. But anyway, back to the main point here about the accountability. So this accountability certainly, as we described earlier, the CEO must get accountability from his direct or her direct reports. But how does accountability work between the members of the executive team?
Well, it's a great question, because primarily what we talk about is peer-to-peer accountability. And the job of the CEO is not just to hold everybody accountable. It's the job of the team to hold each other peer-to-peer accountable. But the leader, the CEO, must take on the most difficult issues. So that could be somebody who's really good at their job, but they're toxic in another way, or it's a family member or a friend. So what we want our clients to get to is a place where there's peer-to-peer accountability. Otherwise, it's just nobody ever gets to be a leader saying, I just can't wait to micromanage everybody. Nobody really wants to do that. In fact, they're afraid to do it to a certain, that's why popularity is so important. So we want to get the team to a place where it's peer-to-peer, but unfortunately, one of the roles of a leader is to take on the most difficult issues. So even if the team is good at peer-to-peer accountability, you'll still always have that responsibility on your shoulder.
And if you're executing this principle well, of holding people accountable, what ultimately happens to individuals that don't want to be accountable?
It's interesting because it's very expensive to separate with somebody if you've separated with them. It's not if they decide to leave and go on their own. So what happens is, in many organizations, people will go, look, this culture isn't for me, this peer-to-peer accountability, the kind of the way that the expectation is, I'd like something a little bit easier, I'd like to run more independently from a team. They'll self-select. People often self-select, and they'll go find a place that's a better fit for them. And I've seen people leave teams that are really highly interdependent with each other, a lot of trust, high accountability with each other. And so it's just not the fit for everybody. And sometimes they'll go and they'll find something that's completely the opposite. They're very, very happy in that. So, your culture actually is a place that will really not only define you, but it will help define who belongs and who doesn't.
And to your point, the most difficult issues ultimately land at the top. And if the CEO is not holding people accountable, everyone knows it. And it will cascade its way downhill once again and have negative effects across the organization. Really fast story. We had a big software initiative that took place over a 2-year period, and each quarter we had defined goals, and the software team was given a significant bonus every quarter if they made the deadline. One quarter, they did not make the deadline. They did not get the bonus. Their manager could not comprehend why they didn't get the bonus. But I felt very strongly that it's really pretty simple. You had tremendous clarity as far as what the goal was. You knew the date, you knew the work product. We agreed going in you were going to get there. You didn't get there. No bonus. So, and ultimately, that person, to your point, chose to exit the organization. Accomplishment is what we're shooting for.
Well put.
That's great for this segment. We'll be back in a minute.